Hello everyone, my name is Bethany Jarrell and I am going to be laying out for you my paper on embodiment theory. If you'll follow along with the slide show I have put together for you, slide 2 is the table of contents. I'm going to break down the historical context of embodiment theories, including the two traditions, cybernetic and semiotic, that I felt best covered the ideology behind the theories that were birthed. And then discussing communication apprehension as it relates to the theories and how it helped formulate them, before moving on to the embodiment theories themselves, including communicology and communibiology. Reverse that, communibiology and communicology, to stay on track. And then finally wrapping it up with practical applications, because as we have learned in this class, a theory is really only as valuable as it is able to be related to real-world applications and help solve a problem of some kind. So, starting off with historical context, I first discussed the cybernetic tradition. The cybernetic tradition is the idea of systems working together to explain how physical, biological, social, and behavioral processes work. The basic theories contributing to the tradition of cybernetics were all started around the end of World War II and were trying to explain that certain behaviors, they couldn't be explained as exclusively teleological. They weren't just mechanical. There were certain behaviors in people as they were communicating that had to be related to something outside of just the mechanics of communication. The thought that interconnected yet independent systems could work together to create a series of actions and reactions is born in the cybernetic tradition, which in turn created embodiment theories such as communibiology. The cybernetic tradition, however, is not the only tradition that generated pathways for more complicated and helpful theories to arise. The second tradition is the semiotic. Semiotics comes from the Greek word semiotikos. I may have butchered that word and I apologize, but it refers to the observer of signs. Semiotics is the study of signs, with signs being a constituent of inference, in which inference can be made of what the sign signifies or stands for. Communication includes, but is not limited to, the study of meaning, understanding how people convey ideas for themselves and to one another on a daily basis. And semiotics is the study of the language that is produced as a result. Semiotic theories elaborate on the idea that a sign can hold significant meaning, even if that value cannot be seen in the physical world. Cultures, languages, and societies build around these signs, and in many ways they affect the behavior of an individual and inform them on what is culturally appropriate or acceptable. Semiotics created a whole new understanding of the way language is created, how communication is influenced by the presence of signs, and the way people respond to external factors that hold significant meanings. Communicology fell within the semiotic tradition. And then moving on to communication apprehension, your next slide. Before jumping to the embodiment theories themselves, I felt like it was important to consider the problem that some of the theorists were attempting to solve, or at least provide a system of treatment as a possible solution. One of the most notable elements of human communication is the sensation of nervousness or anxiety one feels when communicating with one or more people. Studies have shown that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. As the saying goes, most people would prefer to be the one in the coffin than to be the one delivering the eulogy. And as funny as that is, communication apprehension is it's a part of a family of concepts made up of social and communication-related anxiety. Communication and the various members of this family are characterized by a combination of responses, including physiological, with blushing and heart rate, behavioral, including avoidance, and cognitive, which turns thought processes on the self and often results in negative thoughts. Part of the impact of communication apprehension is that there are biological factors that contribute to an individual's experience of communication apprehension, and they cannot necessarily be unlearned as they are not exclusively socially constructed. I delved into this a little bit more when we discussed the practical applications of the theories. But to start off with embodiment theories, the first is communibiology. Communibiology is the study of innate processes that determine or influence communication behavior. In studying communibiology, the role of the brain has taken a more central role as researchers have asked the question, how does the brain produce adaptive behavior? In many ways, the brain resembles a machine, depending on chemical reactions, relying on the integrity of anatomical paths, and the precision of component parts acting upon one another. And yet, the mechanical part of the brain is still able to produce adaptive behavior. The term communibiology was coined by Beatty and McCroskey after they conducted enough research to associate biological processes to various communication traits, including communication apprehension. Basically, McCroskey was really intrigued by the subject of communication apprehension as many people experience various levels of communication apprehension. And they found that previous research was saying that communication apprehension could be unlearned, but as blushing is involuntary, certain elements of communication apprehension had to be biologically based. The premise of communibiology is that all communication is processed first in the brain, which is largely genetically programmed to function the way it does for most people, meaning communication apprehension had a biological foundation. McCroskey and Beattie, with support from other researchers, have established four main positions within the communibiology theory, which include all mental processes having social interaction can be reduced to brain activity, and brain activity precedes psychological experience. Different communication traits are a matter of differences in neurobiological functions. These individual differences in the neurobiological systems are genetically determined, and situational factors have little impact on traits or temperaments, unlike previous research had suggested. And then communicology. Isaac Catt wrote an article on the subject of communicology, which was defined as the study of human discourse, placing the body as the distinguishing or necessary characteristic for communication to occur. Essentially, the body is the prerequisite for communication. One must exist to communicate. The body is a perceiving and expressing channel of discourse, mediating between the self and the cultural signs and codes individuals experience in communicating with others, categorizing it under the semiotic tradition. Ellingson referred to communicology as embodied knowing, as the mind-body system is able to feel, think, experience, and make sense of sensory information holistically, which is then cognitively processed via language. So the practical applications of embodiment theories. The first practical application was the classroom setting. McCroskey focused on the classroom setting because he was interested in how teachers could help students overcome communication apprehension to gain a better experience in the classroom. When research was saying that communication was the result of a lack of training and could be addressed by perfecting different techniques, teachers were limited in their abilities to help students who experienced higher levels of communication apprehension. They related this also to self-talk, and self-talk, which was self-critical, ended up negatively impacting a speaker's confidence levels, which increased their communication apprehension. High communication apprehension in these speakers resulted in shaking knees, quivering voice, and being at a loss for words during the public presentations. All of these are biological symptoms of communication apprehension. For teachers, reducing the communication apprehension of students becomes increasingly important and can be achieved by influencing the atmosphere of the classroom and by helping students identify the symptoms of communication apprehension by addressing them one-on-one instead of in front of the entire class. Another practical application of this theory of communicology and communibiology was the idea of power posing, which came around via popular culture in 2012 when Amy Cuddy presented a TED Talk on power posing, which is a pose involved standing in a type of upright and expansive position that was meant to boost confidence and feelings of power. The idea was related to how body language can govern or influence one's thoughts or feelings, especially self-efficacy, as the posture triggered certain hormones that induced positive feelings of confidence. For professional individuals, the positive impact of power posing helped feelings of confidence before presentations and other forms of interpersonal communication. And then the final practical application is the nonverbal communication and embodiment theory. Nonverbal communication is its own theory, but I did feel like it was related to communibiology and communicology as it is a process of biological functions that prompt much of one's nonverbal behavior in addition to being influenced by culture and signs. Nonverbal communication studies broke down communication into three distinct percentages where nonverbal communication encompasses approximately 55% of communication, with 38% being tone of voice and 7% of communication is the actual message or words being spoken. Because nonverbal communication is such a significant portion of the human experience of communication, I felt like it was important to discuss its relationship to these theories. In an article on psychotherapy research, the authors pointed out that empathy, bonding, and rapport are formed on a body basis, and much of it is based on the nonverbal cues we send to one another. Nonverbal immediacy is a way of connecting to one another by sending positive body signals. All of this to say, embodiment is a very expansive topic, but I really enjoyed researching it and discussing the individual theories that came about and how they can help people understand that, yes, communication is learned, but there are also biological factors that contribute to it. But fortunately, because of the way we were created, we are able to connect with one another and join in one another's sorrows and joys because of the communication that is possible on a physical level. So I appreciate all of your time and your consideration, and I thank you for the participation of this class. I've learned a lot.